got a bop. It's a bop.
I love it.
And now I know how to cancel it, because last time I didn't. And it was a nightmare because, all of a sudden, Dwight and I are sitting there on the podcast, live podcast, and we couldn't get rid of that art project that I created as a opening video. Hello and welcome.
It was a masterpiece.
It was awful. Hello and welcome to the second episode of the HR Data Labs Brown Bag Lunch. Now that Dwight's here, we can get started. And
I'm always the late one.
Well, I think there was a little snafu. One of the snafus was that I tried to use the Riverside desktop app to actually start this thing. Well, that didn't exactly go to plan. So the other thing is I actually don't see this available in... I don't see it online yet. It
has not started yet, as far as I can see.
That's not good.
It's not good.
No, it's not. But we are live. Oh, good Lord.
Got the recording either way, but hopefully we can kick it off there.
Yeah. Well, for those of you who are watching, good Lord, this is just,
Quite good to see you.
Good to see you, Richard.
Well, wait a minute. We said that, we were hoping to get it so it worked perfectly this time. And of course, we got the video thing off the screen, but we didn't get it to get onto LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it too. Technology is wonderful when it works, and it's a bear when it doesn't.
Oh my good gravy!
I don't have too much help for you on Riverside. I've used Restream a couple times.
Yeah,
that was pretty straightforward. But Riverside lets you do more fun stuff.
Yeah, it does. And when it works, well. Anyways, so whether or not we actually will have this recorded, and we have our friend with us, Richard Rosenow from One Model. Now it's One Model, right? Instead of saying
we are finally. We've always been One Model, but our logo finally has separated. Instead of being smushed together as it always was. We had a couple Onomadels for a while there, but we are One Model now.
Okay. Now it's grammatically correct then.
That's correct. That's
awesome. Well, thank you for being here. It's really a pleasure to have you. And as always with the HR Data Labs podcast, we are so happy to have you. But before we get started talking about the amazing topic that we're going to talk about today, and we usually ask, what's one fun thing that no one knows about you? But we know so much about you. What's the last thing you did for the first time?
Oh, my goodness. I was panicking trying to think of something you didn't know about me earlier, and I should have been panicking for different reasons. What's the last thing I did?
Well, if you had listened
for the
or watched
first time.
the last episode, we sprung that on each other.
Nice guilt trip. Way to go, Turetsky.
Yeah. Love keeping it active.
Oh, it's a brilliant question.
Keeping everybody guessing.
I feel like I have a lot of first
There we are.
times.
We're live now, by the way.
Okay.
Finally.
Say hi to everybody.
Good.
I feel like I have a lot of first times lately. I've got two little ones. I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And so a lot of my life lately is first times and seeing first things and getting to see first things again. I mean, that's been
through their eyes.
That's been a lot of it. Yeah, through their eyes. And so it's I lost a chest to my 5-year-old recently. So stuff like that is that's a great first time. It's a very specific one. That's maybe how you answer that question. But a lot of good memories there.
That's not bad. That's a good last thing you did for the first time.
It is fun when our kids open us to eyes that we probably forgot long ago, like when we were kids.
Oh yeah.
Always fun.
Yeah, especially what losing feels like. Now, when I play with my son, when we play hockey all the time, and I'm a goalie, and my son tries to score on me, he kind of gets that feeling of Dad's never going to let me score. But there were 1 or 2 times he actually did get one in the net, and I was very proud of him. And I told him. But I should have saved that.
Got to keep it real.
Yeah,
got to keep it real.
One Dwight last thing for the first time. That was a long time ago. So,
Yeah.
So I forgot to mention, but I really need to. We are sponsored by Salary.com. Salary.com provides data, consulting, and technology to help you in your compensation and HR journey. And on that basis, let's get started with a little transition music, and then we can go to our topic. Hold on. We got a bump.
Leading a growing business, it's like building a plane while flying it. Team building, decision-making, and scaling all at once. At CPO Playbook, we get it. That's why our podcast, ranked in the top 10% worldwide, tackles the toughest leadership challenges with insights to help you lead smarter and grow faster. Tune into the CPO Playbook podcast because leadership doesn't come with a manual, but we're pretty close.
Okay, that's enough.
I feel like I should be holding up a lighter or something.
I love that. As a longtime podcast listener, I didn't realize you guys sat through those and listened to them live.
No. Well, we don't.
No?
No. We
We've
don't
got an
torture ourselves
amazing
with that.
video editor that keeps us from
good.
having to do this.
Yeah, and an audio editor too.
Right. That's right.
So let's talk about our topic for today, which is actually quite interesting, which is I kind of forget how you phrased it, but I'd like you to explain what the topic is.
Yeah, this is a fun one. And this is a active discussion topic. So it's not something that's been hammered out, that's been passed down from on high, but it's something I really wanted to talk to you guys about this. So the premise for this topic, I've been in people analytics for a long time now.
Yes,
Actually, enough people have told me that I've been in it for a long time now that I think I get to say a long time. And what I've noticed is some of the people that I've been in people analytics for a long time, the longer they're in people analytics, the less they trust the data. And one of the funny things, like there's nobody that trusts the data more than that person who just started for their first year in people analytics. They're like, I'm going to fix the world with data. The data will solve everything. And by the time they've been in it for 10 years, they're like, oh my goodness, I've seen the data. I've seen what the data can do. And we know there's more. And so the thing that we run into a lot is this idea of, well, is it intuition or is it data? Which one is it? Do I bring this side of myself? Do I bring that side of myself?
Right.
And what I've started to talk more about is I don't think it's an either or. I think there's something about going through. And by going through, the term I threw out there was this idea of postmodern HR. And so it's a very like highbrow way to talk about it, but I got a kick out of it. So I've been talking about this term. But if we think about like traditional HR being very artisan, very intuition, and humans are humans, you have to be. That's the right thing to do in that time period. Right. Modern HR being classified by we've got to go data. We've got to go heavy data. This idea of postmodern says, well, once we have the data, once we know our data, once we have established that foundation, what's next? What comes after that? And I think it is a return to some of that intuition-based layering on top of and augmenting the data. And so there's an interesting conversation, I think, just starting in the field around what did we do, what have we done, and not necessarily a debate between those things, but how do we push through this data to get to that other side, to get back to what HR really needs to do? So it's a big setup there, but I would love your kind of initial thoughts, and let's riff on that a little bit.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the setup. So a lot of times when we were in HR a long time ago, basically what we do is we did use a lot of intuition, because when we had data, a lot of times that data had a shelf life and was relatively stale. And so I'm specifically talking about compensation for right now, because we are a really data-centric function in compensation. So we used a lot of our intuition, but we used a lot of data. Data had a shelf life, and we didn't know what was going on today. Fast forward to now, we have a ton of data. We're swimming in data. There's a ton of things, whether it's internet-based, whether it's survey-based, whether it's the compensation technologies that Dwight and I swim in every day, and I'm sure you do too, Richard. But one of the things we like to do is have our data, like I think what you're talking about is evidence-based decision-making. So take the data we have, fuel our intuition with it, and then be able to come out of the other side with an answer that makes more sense to right this second. Right?
Yeah, it's a good point. And I know you said evidence-based decision-making. My good friend Rob Briner, if he gets wind of this, he's a phenomenal resource on that when it comes to kind of like evidence-based decision-making in HR. And there is a really good point there about like evidence-based decision-making doesn't mean data-only decision-making. And
Yeah.
or it doesn't mean quantitative data only decision making. And this idea though of, I think a lot of times when people position themselves, they say, well, I'm like 80% HR, I'm like 20% data, or I'm like 20% HR, like 80% data. What I want to challenge people about is we probably need to be 80-80. We probably need to be both.
We're 100%, 100%.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Ideally, like perfect world, we're there. But these are not forces that are opposed. And I think a lot of times in HR, when we talk about who we are, who we will be, who we're going to be, we frame them in that way that's very oppositionally, and that language matters a lot. When the truth is, we definitely need both as we head into this next era.
Well, and, I mean, let's also talk about how we've gotten to the point that we're at, where it can be that 80-20 split. And to your original point, there's that data trust. And I think early career people haven't been through as much of the crap, for lack of a better word, to really get to the point where they don't trust the data. There's that inherent trust. It's like the data's got to be right. And once you've had some significant challenges with it, part of what feeds that intuition is just the scope of what you've dealt with in the past. The badness that can happen. And I think it's in data, it's also easy to get jaded because of that. Because you can focus on where things can go wrong. And if you're always focusing on that, it's hard to swing that around to that 100-100 split that you have.
Let me also throw in there, though, Richard, that a lot of times we're looking for the technologies that we're utilizing to give us feedback and to feed us this insight. So at the point we're making the decision, that data is there to inform what's the best decision. I'm not talking about the technology making the decision for us. I'm not saying that there should be prescriptive analytics necessarily. But what I'm saying is that having at least an understanding about what has been successful in the past. If I have a fork in the road, which way, because it knows which way I want to go, which way will get me to that answer, or the best answer, the best way, because the system knows how many times that fork is, both sides of the fork have been taken, which is going to get me to the optimal outcome.
Yeah, and I think that's the idea of data helps us make better bets. And you've got to have a sense of that. And it's almost like one of the HR leaders I was talking to recently, we were discussing this idea of data earns you the right to get back to intuition. So I could say, well, the data is not perfect, so I'm going to have to use my gut. That's not okay anymore. The data will give us a slightly better edge about, hey, which direction. It's not going to say 100% down one fork and 0% down the other fork. It's going to say like, hey, 80 or 75, 25, whatever it might be. And as it does that, then I say, okay, now let me bring my intuition back in. Because I've exhausted the data, because I've built that foundation, I know that I'm in a better position now, that my human intelligence that I'm going to bring back to bear will be that much more effective. And I think that's a path forward for HR to really get back to some of its roots too. Because as HR people, I think a lot of us have gone through that phase of, hey, I got into this for the people. I want to support the people. I'm a people person. And then this phase of, okay, I've got to be a data person and I'm going to be data oriented. And then getting back to that human on the far side, I think, is what's so exciting, especially in this age where AI is starting to wipe out so much stuff. And we've seen that at one model, like a lot of our tooling on our platform, the goal is to take on as much of that stuff as we can to let the humans get back to the human stuff. And I think that's a really exciting proposition for the future of HR. And maybe for some of these holdouts that are maybe held out on data for now, it's like, hey, now's the time to get in because it's going to be easier to kind of get back to that stuff that you really love. But I'm very excited about that vision of the future of HR. It's not this cold calculating minority report HR. It gets back to that, okay, what can't the computer do? That's what you have to go do now.
But just like the self-driving car, there's got to be a way for us to embed these types of insights for them to be consumed, because you can't assume that someone's going to know where to find the answer. This is a really difficult thing to ask. You can ask an AI agent, probably not the right thing. You can ask a Gen AI a question, especially if it's formatted correctly, and it can tell you what it believes given the information it has access to, given the data it has access to, whatever. but you don't know because you actually have to go find it and then be able to ask it that question. Whereas in the moment, until we actually have those optical or the glasses that have that optical assist in them, I forget which movies that was in, but the one where you can see what the answer should be and then you say it because the answer is right in front of your eyes. Huh. But until that happens, until there's an embedding of that insight into the decisions you're making at the moment you're making them, that's going to be difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's where it's why humans are still required and humans are still needed. And I think that's what I've been relishing whenever I kind of see this. You can be so excited about the data, you can be so excited about the advances here, and also see what's remaining for humans and what will be left for humans kind of on the far side of these advances. And so because we don't have the human or the computer just telling us exactly what to do as automatons, hopefully that's not where this goes. There's still a fork where maybe that happens, but we're avoiding that one as much as we can. But I think about that stuff that's like, what remains? It's not necessarily stuff that a computer is going to be able to figure out, which is like meaning, purpose. Like, why are we doing this work? Why does this work matter to you? That kind of stuff within HR is what I'm talking about, where it's that like deeply anthropological HR.
Yeah.
Where the HRBP is the anthropologist that supports and understands work and brings that human empathy to bear. That is so critically required in today's workforce alongside of the data mindedness. And I think it's the combination of those two things that gets us where we're going. It's not a, hey, you guys stay over here, we're going to do the computer stuff over here. It's got to be together.
Yeah. It's that balance of qualitative versus quantitative that you brought up. And that's a hard balance to strike sometimes, and I think it's kind of a learned behavior too. It takes a while to really cement it over time.
Well, that's why, Dwight, I'm asking whether or not this should really be in line with the decisions we're making and not in your classes. But
right,
if you're in a meeting and someone says, "Hey, I want you to make a decision," obviously we don't have the data in front of us unless we pull up our computer and say, hold on a second, I'll check it out.
Right.
But then we're really using our intuition. And to Richard's point, we're using our built-in, this is why we're here, our built-in value. Yep. I was looking for the word. But that's why I'm saying I think when you're making a decision, let's say, I'll give you an example of promotion. Someone's being promoted into a role and you have to judge whether this is the right person, and then you have to judge whether or not you're giving them a promotional increase and how good that is relative to the peers in that role, making sure there's equity, making sure that you just didn't give them an increase 5 minutes ago, and this is compounding on top of that, and why are we doing that? So you really need to, as I keep saying, I'm sorry, maybe I'm a broken record on this, in line when you're making those decisions, have that insight, because otherwise you're going to keep making the same dumb mistakes over and over again.
Yeah, and I love the example of promotions because I think this is a fascinating one to talk about that evolution and structure through these phases. When we, prior to analytics and data being a major part of the conversation, if humans are looking at a spreadsheet full of stuff or humans are trying to figure out who do we promote within the company, there's a really a famous study kind of looking at humans in math about how many variables a human can hold in their head. And you can think about that as if you're looking at those giant spreadsheets that everyone has around performance time that has 600 columns out to the right.
Right.
Yeah.
It turns out humans are good up to about five.
Around columns?
Five columns.
Really?
We start to break down.
I can see it.
Are you talking about frozen columns? Or are we talking about
just in terms of if I had 5 data points about you?
Yeah.
If you add 6 or 7, suddenly they start to blur a little bit.
Yeah.
And we perform less well compared to a computer because that's regression is what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're saying, look at all these data points and look at all these people and try to do some regression here. We can hold about 5. Past that, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
So that kind of prior one of promotion to moving to, okay, the computer, look across all this data and use all 600 data points. The computer outperforms where we were when it comes to understanding who's ready for promotion. But we should not give the computer the ability to promote people by itself.
Right.
Because we know that there's stuff about humans that hasn't been captured. There's the stuff that hasn't been encoded by the technology. There's the stuff that hasn't been brought into our systems. There's, that person was on leave, but the leave data is not in there. Or this person had, they're especially for these reasons, these things are going on. All of that stuff that the HR team knows then comes in as that layer. And then the managers and the leaders know too. But that's that final layer, that intuition that layers on top of the data. And it doesn't invalidate the data. And it doesn't invalidate our first kind of reactions too, but it does, you've got to go through the data to get there.
Right.
To earn the spot again, then to say, okay, now that we have it, now that we feel confident in this data, that we feel like we know what it is, we've kind of exhausted our value. Now let's come in and bring the HR and the human side back in. I think that's that postmodern element that, and this might not be a new term, this might not be a new space, but I think it's an interesting way to start thinking about this framework for how we evolve through HR, and that it's not a either or opposing forces, but it's we've got to go together and get to the other side of that.
Remember when there was a time when we didn't have computers? Everything was done on paper. Like we're really good at creating tabular stuff on paper, and everything had to be done with a clipboard or with a memo or something being typed out. Then we introduced the computer to it, and very rapidly we got very comfortable with creating these damn spreadsheets for everything because to your point, our mind was able to get around 5 or 6 columns, and now we have the computer to do it for us. I will tell you, I feel very comfortable with everything you just said, except for the fact of the data quality thing you brought up, because the data quality still is pretty bad. Because that promotion or the data that you know about the person is only good as the last time it was updated.
Yeah.
So what skills they have, what skills they've lost because people forget stuff, or what they knew isn't modern anymore because no one gives a crap about C++ anymore. I'm sure someone on LinkedIn is going to say we still care about C++. But you know what I mean? You're like,
oh, totally. Yeah, I think that's why we're in business to a degree. So that's part of one model's pitch is like, hey, your data's everywhere. You got to get it in one spot. We got to make sense of it, model it. One of the other things we've been looking into a lot, though, is these upstream challenges. And where I've been talking to HR teams and a lot of people analytics leaders, and I think this is why these people analytics leaders over time become less trustful of the data and start becoming more kind of like general HR professionals, is they start realizing, well, to do analytics, well, I need access to my data. To get access to my data, I need good tech. But good tech is only as good as the operations you put into it, which are the processes we've written down.
Right.
And the processes and operations we've written down are only as good as our strategy. And that flow from strategy, ops, tech, data, analytics, that flow is starting to become more clear to more teams. And as we've started to see HR teams, as they look at this sort of like, how do I prepare people for the data to make the decisions they need to make? It turns out it's not as easy as just your tech is perfect and the data comes out great.
Right.
We've got to go online and create this sort of flow and start to manage and curate that flow so that way it flows properly and all the way through.
Right.
You know, that's like what this guy always talks about, data governance. As you were talking, I'm like, wow, Dwight's all over this thinking, that means they need a good data governance strategy. But you know, who has a data governance strategy around HR data? Dwight?
Well, and to your point, Dwight, how come you're pointing at me?
Because you're the data governance guy.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about that piece. We always have to realize, and the same is true with data governance. There's always a certain level of wrongness to the data, and I think that's part of the problem of working through that chain that you were talking about. Is that people come in with an expectation of perfection, especially if we've got computers in the mix. Like, hey, when you're dealing with ones and zeros, it's going to spit out a right answer or a wrong answer. If it's right, it's great. If it's wrong, it's terrible. Everything's crap. I hate the data. But you know, getting back to the chain that you talked about, utilizing good data governance is just one of the pillars of being able to get the data or the messaging or the understanding from top to bottom.
Yeah, and I love that look at the data. There's we used to say like people analytics, you're in it, but then eventually you get to that like quantum layer where like you're like, I'm going to study attrition. You start looking at attrition, you start going deeper and deeper, and suddenly you're like, well, how is this written down, and who entered this, and when they entered it, what did they enter it? What did they think they meant? What actually happened here? And you're like, oh no, this world has gotten so much bigger. And it's one of the things that I find fascinating about this space is like the further you go, the deeper you get, the more vast these problems become. When then you start thinking of things like, well, this turnover was encoded as a 1. but everybody's turnover is a little bit different. Were they angry that they got fired? Were they delighted to be fired?
Right.
Did they, steal things on the way out? Like all of
All
those
these
things that
other
like
things.
we
Yeah.
boiled that to one.
But
And
the
it's
other,
like, oh, that was a human choice we made at some point in our human system that we've pushed into our technology.
Right.
but it's the human that put it in
Yeah.
that has the major error, because we've dealt with, and Dwight and I have had this opportunity to deal with this, where the person who's the administrator who's entering that termination doesn't know why they left. So they chose a reason. By the way,
Yeah.
there are 100 action reason codes for termination, and then the action reason code for why they left. 100 of them. And so they just look through that list, and after a while, they just go resignation.
Yeah.
Which doesn't tell you anything,
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
it may have been even been, job abandonment, which is very important to know, or got another job, or left because spouse moved, or whatever. Those are really important to understand. But unfortunately, because they didn't know, we've lost that context completely.
And I think that's one of the fascinating things about this space is we think it's a very quantitative discipline. It's a very technical discipline. And something I would pass on to any HRBPs or HR folk that are listening is like the more you push on the quantitative side, underneath it, it's humans again.
Yes.
It's
Right.
always a human thing underneath at the very bottom. And I think that's what makes people analytics so fascinating, because you think you're merging multiple disciplines, but at the end of the day, it's how do I work with people across the organization? And these senior people analytics leaders that have been in the space for so long, they've gotten really, really good at change management and communication and resource management, almost more so than data science, because that's actually what you need to do good analytics at an organization. It's a lot of change management.
Yeah. Big time.
Well, we're not going to be able to solve world peace today because we only have 2 minutes left, Richard.
Oh, no.
Yes, that's the problem with only having a half an hour and then having two bumbleheads like he and I as the hosts of this, where we didn't get started until a minute after. Let's close it with this. This is an open conversation. We're not going to solve it today. But what you're trying to get to is a place where we open our minds and we open our hearts as HR people and as business people to the fact that we need to be more centered around leveraging the insights that are at or should be at our fingertips, right?
Yeah, and I think it's the data is required. You must be making decisions with data today, but that doesn't preclude you from bringing the human in. In fact, it enables you to bring the human in. And I think that's the part that's very exciting to me, is this sort of once you achieve data mindedness and once you achieve that data literacy as an organization, that actually lets you be more human at the end of the day.
Right.
Drop the mic.
There we go.
Exactly. Total mic drop moment.
Well, and we're obviously going to have you back so we can keep discussing this.
Oh, yeah. We
because-
want more of
Anytime.
these.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they hear about a lot of what you're talking about, they're going to say, well, it's evidence-based HR. Well, I think it's beyond evidence-based HR. You're talking about using real data to make these decisions or to inform human decisions. And to me, that's beyond evidence-based. But
I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So much to dig into.
yeah, it's always a pleasure to deal with you and to just be in the same like Zoom with you or whatever we're calling this, Riverside or whatever.
I'll come back anytime. Thank you for the invite.
We're going to hold you to that.
We are.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Dwight.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us today, Richard.
Totally.
You are an absolute pleasure, and you are a treasure as well. And for those of you who don't know Richard, look him up on LinkedIn. He does a lot of really phenomenal work in the HR and people metrics and analytics and data world. We actually did have a question for you, Richard, before we go, which was, is there any guide for HR metrics that you can point us to?
That's a good question. There was so there's a little bit of history in the space. There was a company way back when called InfoHRM, Inform. Inform was purchased by SuccessFactors, got purchased by SAP, and then those Inform people said, hey, enough of that, let's go start One Model. So One Model has this long legacy dating back to Inform days. Inform published a manual way back in the day. It's supposedly the Bible for HR metrics. I have been dying to get my hands on a copy of it. If you have a copy of it, let me know. But it's a fantastic resource.
But what's the relationship of that to the SHRM metrics? Because there's a SHRM 100.
I haven't seen that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that one too. It's always tough because here's the quick answer to that too. The metrics you should focus on are the ones your business cares about. And unfortunately, they're not in the top 10 metrics blogs or the top 100 metrics blogs. They're what keeps your CEO and CHRO up at night.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit of like find those, build those locally. Highly recommend anything by John Boudreau on that. He's done a lot of phenomenal work early on in that space. But the answer is a little fuzzier than here's the ones you need to go find, unless you can find that informed book. And if you do, let me know.
And by the way, this is not whack-a-mole where you create dashboards that have every single metric in the world.
Potential metric, yeah.
Right. You don't do that. To Richard's point, use the ones that matter most to your organization. And I would say even, to the point that Richard made before, use the ones that feel like with your intuition make the most sense to your organization. And it's not always about headcount, by the way.
It's probably about headcount somewhere.
It might be. Hey, it might be about manufacturing. It might be about overtime. Yeah. It might be about absences. It might be about PTO balances. There are tons of really phenomenal metrics that, when I was developing ADP's technology for metrics, I had a lot of things to look at. And to be honest, at the end of the day, it kind of did boil down to headcount and how I could use our X axes to kind of show headcount in different ways. So
6 degrees of separation from headcount.
Exactly. Yeah. Kevin Bacon gets brought into yet another conversation. But again, thank you. You're amazing. We love having you, and you're a true friend of our podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, fellas.
And thank you all for listening. Take care, stay safe, and come back next week where we have yet another phenomenal guest. Obviously, nowhere near as wonderful as Richard. Thank you very much. Take care. So I've